Oh, Matty, technology drives me insane. That was one of the most uncomfortable phone calls I had to make after we filmed last week.
That's all right.
And Match came in, she was like, "You haven't pressed the record button." I was like, "Can you phone Matty for me?"
Yeah.
I was like, "No." So round 2, here we go. So the minimalist challenge is so it's on Netflix, these 2 guys, and on day 1 you get rid of 1 item.
Okay.
On day 2 you get rid of 2 items. On day 3 you get rid of 3 until you've done 30 days, and that's something like 400 odd items.
Wow.
And it's surprisingly difficult.
Yeah.
So there's clothes in my wardrobe, like I was saying just before we come on here, that I haven't worn for years,
Yeah.
but there's attachments to these things.
Yeah.
And you're practicing the form of non-attachment as well.
Trying to, yeah.
What area are you doing it in?
A lot of materials. So I've been stripping down a lot lately anyway. Yeah, take your glasses off, Alex. I want to look into your eyes. Yeah, just material things. It makes you realise, I've been thinking lately, materially, we're probably the most developed we've ever been, if that's a correct thing to say. But we're also in a time where we're struggling more with mental health more than ever. So it makes you wonder a little bit. We're attached to a lot of these material things that will sometimes give us quick fixes or quick highs, but the glass is never full, and you're always trying to refill with new material things. So non-attachment for me is a massive thing. And then there's non-attachment to material bodies, which is not attaching to humans, and to loved ones. And that's another level, that is, isn't it? That's a different level,
We'll go there in a minute. I started on a real basic level of I thought of it more like a bit of a detox as well. So I cleared off things off my phone, just started real basic. So what's on my phone that's distracting me and making me not be present. So like social media apps. So if I want Facebook now, it's laptop.
Yep.
So that was a good place to start.
Yeah.
And then I went straight to material stuff, then clothes. Just bits and bobs in the kitchen, like plates, cups, and I was like, I'm never going to use these. Yeah. Never used them.
We've got more than enough, haven't we? Yeah.
And I've got like 100 glasses. and I thought, just start simple. Because it's a bit like the Jeff Fear pyramid, the higher up the pyramid you get of attachment, like when you start to give away big things and you start to move on to like cars and stuff, don't you? Like, forget the flash car. Yeah. Let's get this car that gets me from A to B. Yeah. That's the next level.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's the not attaching to people.
Yeah,
I've never really heard of this.
That's a universal thing, that isn't it? They talk about it in the Bhagavad Gita. So that talks about attachment to material bodies, and that's, like I said, that's a different level to where I'm at, for sure.
What are they encouraging then, to go inside and just work on the self?
Yeah, it's all about working on yourself.
Do you ever find it selfish, or do you have to battle that? Like, what do you mean, just work on me? Don't become attached to anyone.
Yeah, but where does selfishness come from? And where does proper selfishness come from? Because if I'm in a good place mentally, physically and spiritually, everyone who is in my life benefits. So that's a good thing for everyone. And then I'm not relying on anyone or any kind of attachment or any material thing to make me happy. I just kind of rely on myself. So again, the self-care practices, get them in place, get your routines in place, but don't attach to them. If you can't do your weight training session that morning, it's not going to be the end of the world. Just kind of move on, because we get obsessive.
We do get obsessive. I think especially with guys do. I see a lot of this with guys, and
I think women as well.
Yeah, I think because I speak definitely. With guys.
Yeah, I understand.
They will really struggle to envision or cope without a partner or their partner. So when they're on their own, they just really, some guys are always in a relationship.
Yes.
So, because the kind of like the fear of being alone. But then again, a lot of the successful guys that I find, and again, it depends what you define as successful. They always talk about the rock, the person that's with them every step of the way. The great woman behind every great man. Yeah. Like, where do you sit with that then? Like, do you believe that has a role to play in development?
I think because of the world we live in, where you've kind of, if you're lucky, you've been brought up by a beautiful mother, who's cared for you, sometimes mothered you a bit too much, and then that can lead into your like you're saying, that life of where you're kind of trying to replace your mother with a girlfriend. So that's when these guys can't be on their own, you know. But I've been in my relationship since I was 14. So I've been with Sarah, you know, and she's very beautiful, and she's had to put up with a lot of a lot of my traits. But I think that's kind of, it's benefited us, you know. So it's benefited me to have that person that I can offload to, you know, and brings a kind of a feminine kind of attribute to my previously male-dominated world. You know, so that's really, really helpful.
And other people make life worth living, don't they?
Yeah, but again, are we relying on that too much? You know, can you rely on that too much? It's like, if I don't, you know, we don't look at death, do we, very often? And you know, that's an area that is part of the human experience. You know, we're all going to die. You know, I was always, you know me, a few years ago, I was really into kind of this anti-aging thing, trying to stay young for as long as possible, you know. And
it's not worked.
You know, maybe not. But, but now, because I'm so much more content within myself, you know, when it's my time to leave this material body, then it's my time. So although I obviously want to live on this planet for as long and as healthy as possible, you know, I think it's inevitable that I'm going to die. So I don't attach to that anymore as well as much. You know, I'll still do my fasting, but I don't fast for weight loss. I fast for longevity. You know, because it just puts you in a healthier place, not eating so much.
I think we all know we're
not for
die,
everyone.
But do we all really know we're going to die? Because I mean, we certainly don't live like that, do we?
Well, if you do live your life like, you know, there is a God or your form of God, you're probably going to live a better life, you know. And for me, this isn't the end. When you leave this material body, whether your consciousness goes back into the earth, you're still kind of surviving. You're still going to be living, but just in another form, another manifestation of energy.
I heard someone challenge this. I think it was at a university where they said, because of sometimes the belief that there's more to life after this life, people don't really grab the essence of this particular life because they believe there's more. And you know, people are holding their hands up and saying, "Yeah, I kind of like that." I'm like, "This isn't the only life I'm going to get." And I'm like, well, that's a risky game to play.
It's a risky game, and I think as well, from my own belief systems, is that if we are put on this material world to connect to our spirit and to progress in an afterlife, if there is one, if we keep coming back to this material world, we're not progressing. So if you're living your life thinking, "Oh, well, I'll get another chance," it's not a great place to be, because, you know, if your spirit does come back in another human form, that life might not be as well developed as the life you're living now. And
do you
if
think
that's
what
the
you do in
case,
this life determines the quality of next life then?
Yeah.
You do, yeah.
Yeah, I do think that can happen. You know, there's a bit of a karmic kind of debt might need to be paid, or you might be a good person and, you know, you might evolve from this dimension, this form, you know. Again, not many people have experienced death in their lives. You know, I've obviously sat with death. It's been part of my life. You know, there's loved ones, you know, material bodies who've left this earth sooner than they should have. You know, so you have to face it. You have to deal with it. You have to sit with it. And that's very, like you said, that's very different to people. Everyone knows they're going to die, but no one really sits with it and thinks about it. And it's seen as being morbid. And it's, you know, for me, it's being realistic. It's, again, connecting to nature. You look at nature and, you know, nature lives, nature dies. You know, it keeps growing and it keeps coming back, you know. So we can learn a lot of lessons from.
Yeah, Stuart Williams said something interesting. He was like, we can sit and try and pretend to experience what it's like not to be here and to be dead. But he said, like, if you can do that, you're not experiencing death, perhaps, because, you know, some people believe that it's lights out, like there's absolutely nothing. So you can't experience that.
Yeah.
Because even by the process of experiencing it, you're not actually fucking dead.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's like, who knows? How old are you, Matt?
44.
Would you have had this conversation like 15 years ago? Like this kind of conversation? Was it something that you wanted to explore then, or was this new?
Again, a lot of people ask, you know, how long have you been on this path for? And it's like, well, since I was born. You know, this is my path that I've ended up in. You know, and again, there's destiny and free will. You know, and for me, it's a bit of both. You know, we get opportunities in life where we make choices, or we have perceptions of how we're going to live our life, and that perception can change your direction a little bit. So I'd like to think I was always aware of this, or an afterlife. You know, I was brought up as a Catholic, so the religion was kind of there, and the Bible was there. I'm not so much a practicing Catholic now, but I definitely believe there's something. I believe there's a God.
Where's that belief come from? Have you created it?
Do you know what? I think that belief probably has come from me looking at myself and looking inside and looking internally, and some experiences I've had that have made me aware of that belief. You know, if my belief's breath, if breath is my God, while I'm breathing, I'm alive, then breath is something to be celebrated. You know, while we're breathing, we're very lucky. You know, we're experiencing God. You know, so I thank God for my breath. You know, and that's when I feel I've got a balance of this life, making the most of this life, but not attaching to this life as well. It's kind of you're in the middle, and it's quite a good place to be, actually.
Sounds it. We've gone straight into the deep end today.
Yeah.
Should we talk about what you've been doing?
Why not?
Well, for about the 4 months that you spent in Peru, because I'm interested to know more. I know we spoke on it briefly last time, but it'd be cool to know a little bit more about your experience in Peru, especially was it an 8-day phase of cleansing and living off very, very kind of few calories and basically a plant, right?
Yeah. A tree. Yeah.
Let's hear more about this.
So, last July, end of July, I went to Peru. I ended up staying there for 4 months, working at a retreat centre called La Medicina. That works. It does work with civilians, but we had some ex-veterans who were suffering from PTS and depression, and they go to the retreat, which a lot of them were American. The retreat's in Peru, and they get plant medicine, and with that plant medicine, and they go in there with intentions as well, but they get to look at themselves, and it gets to look at their depression, their PTS, and to be fair, the healing I've seen from it, not for everyone, because it's not for everyone as well, but for the majority that I've seen and worked with myself, and my own healing, it's been amazing. It's been miraculous.
When you say they get to see themselves, is this through the experience of consuming the plant? Yeah,
well, when you're using, like, we give them ayahuasca, and I'm just a facilitator there. You know, there's a shaman who gives out the ayahuasca, who conducts the ceremony. I'm just there cleaning sick buckets and making sure everyone's all right, kind of thing. Probably doing the jobs that the shaman doesn't do anymore, kind of thing, but has done them in the past. So yeah, what's happened in my experience with ayahuasca especially is you kind of get to a place where you're having like a dialogue, either with yourself, with your higher self, with a spirit, with God. Again, it depends on your interpretation of it. I've had a ceremony where I've sat there with what felt like God, and I haven't felt any need to have any dialogue. Just sitting there in the presence of a spirit was enough for me. But then there's been times before that where I've had a dialogue, and it's like you're talking to yourself, your breath, your God, whatever you want to call it. And sometimes you'll start talking about things that have happened in your life, trauma that's happened in your life, places that you're stuck, loops that you're stuck. It might be in your brain, it might be in your body. And plant medicine shows you these things sometimes. It presents maybe an experience that's happened 20 or 30 years ago. And sometimes it will make you sit in it. So it can be quite uncomfortable sometimes. And then it can also give you a big hug and give you a lot of love, because a lot of people who've been through traumatic experiences, especially veterans who've seen friends die and felt used and abused, some of them need a bit of self-love, like all of us. We all need to be able to rely on ourselves, to love ourselves. So that experience with the plant medicine is quite powerful, because you are in a dialogue with, say, your higher self, and you get to ask yourself questions. So people say, it's not good to judge anybody. We're all on our own journeys, but when you're your higher self and you're judging yourself, you'll find answers. And sometimes your judgment of yourself might be too critical as well, and you have to let that go.
Well, you had 8 days to sit and contemplate completely, didn't you?
Yeah, well, what I did when I first got there is I did in the last sort of 9 months, I've done 3 dietas, and a dieta is like a spiritual cleanse, and you go into a tambo. So the first week I got there, I went into a tambo, which is like a little shack or shed with a bed and you get like a book. You can take books in with you, but I decided not to take any books, and you're living in the jungle. So they've got hammocks in the tambos, which are a bit of luxury. But the way the sheds are, they're not windows on them. You get nets, and the nets just stop insects from coming in. So you're kind of outside, and you sit there with your own thoughts, and you sit there with your ego for the first couple of days, because your ego is trying to attach to something, and you'll role play and you'll go over things, fantasize. But then after a couple of days, you're kind of on your own. You find your true self, and
you're talking practically here. You're on your own.
You're on your own, yeah.
You're
in
the talk things through. You're on about with yourself.
Again, it's that inner dialogue. We all kind of have these conversations with ourselves.
So you don't go trekking, you don't do...
No, you're allowed to go and walk out. The toilets, you've kind of got a toilet cubicle which is outside. So, there are times when you do go outside, but you're away from... You're not allowed to be with people or speak to people. The shaman will come and see you. The people who work under him will come and drop food off to you. Very limited food. You'll have porridge in the morning. You'll have rice and plantain in the afternoon, and then you'll get a thing called fermented yucca, which is not really very tasty or anything, but it's got all the nutrients. You can survive off that on its own. So you're very limited with your food. The first tree that I dieted on was called Ayahuasca, which is not psychoactive. And the idea of dieting on a plant or on a tree is that you connect to the spirit of that plant, and that plant grows inside you. And Ayahuasca, the first one I did, was a very grounding plant. So I did that for 8 nights, and then I did some retreats working with the soldiers, and then I did another dieta. The idea of doing a dieta when you're a facilitator is to protect yourself, spiritually protecting yourself. Because when you're in a ceremony and you've got people purging, they're purging up energy, and that energy can attach to you as well if you're not careful. And sometimes people are bringing up some real traumatic experiences. There's a lot of crying, there's also laughing, there's confusion, there's bliss, there's all the emotions are going on, and you're in that ceremony, you're part of that. If you're not careful, that energy will attach to you, and you can suffer because of that. So the idea of the dieta is to keep myself protected from other people's energies. And it worked for me quite well. The last one I did, which was only a couple of months ago, well, probably about 6 weeks ago, it was great to be back in that timbre, no distractions, on my own again. And I kind of really relaxed into it this time. And I really felt that benefit of that. The tree I used then was called Uchi Sanango, which is a tree that resets your nervous system and also gives you clarity. And it's still growing in me. I can still feel it. I've never slept so well in my life as well. So the reset of the nervous system was a fantastic thing, you know, especially in the kind of Western world we live in. Our nervous system's getting attacked all the time. And to have that cleansed still feels great.
So if I was doing this podcast with Matty Evans of 10 years ago, then like, what would be the most striking differences between you of 10 years ago versus the guy I'm sitting opposite now?
I think I said the right things 10 years ago, but my actions weren't doing the right things.
Well, how many of us can relate to that?
Yeah, that's it. And we can all talk the talk, you know, but I've always been quite kinesthetic, so I've always been a very touchy-feely person. And 10 years ago, my ego would have been saying the right things, and it would have been protecting me, and it would have been, it's not about the ego and it's all this, but was I really feeling it? Nah, I still had my guard up.
Was that not just the fight though that you had to go through?
Yeah, it's just the journey, isn't it?
So it wasn't like you were intentionally not backing it up. It was you going through the fight, right?
Yeah, you're going through the fight, but the fight again can be the made-up world. You know, I was sitting here talking about energy and plant medicine and that, and people are probably thinking, energy? What do you mean? But we create these worlds ourselves. We create the world you're living in. You know, you'll create the habits, whether they're good or bad. You know, you'll create the problems, you'll create the suffering. You know, pain's kind of inevitable. Suffering is kind of a bit of a perception. One person's pain might be, or one person's suffering might be someone else's kind of growth. You know, so me 10 years ago, I was still on my journey. I wasn't ready for where I am now. I'm just glad to be able to look back and to say, wow, the growth there was amazing. You know, so I feel I have evolved, moved on from that person, and that's kind of what I want. A lot of people are scared of change. Change can be difficult. But, you know, I want to look back in 10 years' time and think back to this and go, wow, that was a great journey, you know, and I enjoyed that journey. I enjoyed myself 10 years ago. You know, I was having a good time. And I was where I needed to be. But I've always been looking for growth. I've always been looking to evolve. And that progress has naturally led to this progress. You know, I think like yourself, when you've been in the industry of eating well, training well, thinking about what you're putting in your body, thinking about what you're putting out of your body, language, you know, you're always on that path. The problem with that path is it can be you can get stagnant and you can stay stuck in that kind of ego-dominated path. And I just feel I've just stepped out of that a little bit. And it feels good to take my armour off. The fight was too much.
You can kind of sense it when you're around you as well.
Yeah.
It's strange, I can't articulate it.
Yeah.
But it's like you have shedded that arm. I was going to use the word rebirth. I didn't know if that was too dramatic or not, or whether you'd go with that.
I'll go with that. Again, like ayahuasca, the spirit of ayahuasca is known to be like a snake. And the snake sheds its skin, you know, and while it's shedding its skin, you know, it has to hide away behind a rock, and it has to keep itself protected, because when we're shedding our skin, we're vulnerable. But then once you've shed your skin and then you've created a new skin, you're bigger, you're stronger, you're in a better place. So for me, that analogy of that is a great, and a snake doesn't just shed its skin once in its lifetime, it's many times, you know. So the pain and the suffering is that time when you are shedding your skin and you're vulnerable. And sometimes when you're in that suffering, you know, it's like you're at the bottom of the well and all you can see is a little light, and sometimes you can't even see the light at the top of that well. But hopefully one day you'll be at the top of that well, looking down into the dark and saying, well, that was actually a good journey for me. There was a lot of growth in that discomfort. While you're in it, it's very hard to kind of go, oh, everything's going to be all right. You know, you're suffering, you know, and you need that time to feel that suffering, to sit with that suffering. And that's what no one's doing. No one wants to accept that part of the human experience. You know, and that's the place we should be in. You know, we relate it to physical things, no pain, no gain, and you know, to get good you've got to go through it, you know, but when it's kind of a mental suffering and you can't get out of bed, you know, you don't want to hear that. You don't want to hear no pain, no gain. You don't want to hear you're going to be all right, you know, but you also don't want to sit and wallow. So it's getting that balance, you know. And I do feel different to where I was 3 years ago, let alone 10 years ago.
I'm sure, man. I'm sure. I heard the podcast. Well, I was listening to a podcast this morning, and you just pretty much echoed what was said on there. When we're talking about change, and I kind of like, you know, when it's one of those obvious things you hear on a podcast, but a bit of a light bulb goes off in your head, and you're like, that's so simple yet so true. And it was this guy talking about. He said the first thing you have to do with change is kind of like not convince yourself, but be sure that you want to change.
Yeah.
Because we can all sit there and wish and hope for things, but like, I know in my life, until I really commit and say I want to change, that's the big step.
Yeah.
Not wishing, not hoping, like saying I actually want to change.
Yeah.
Because when you get stuck in your own ways, you get everything you want. That's the thing, temporarily, don't you?
Yeah.
There's some reward, otherwise you'd move.
It becomes comfortable.
Very comfortable. Even
in that own suffering. Even if you are depressed and you can't get out of bed, you find your own comfort in that depressive mode, you know, and again, that might be part of your journey, and that journey might go on for 10 years, you know, but we create with a thought what we want, and that thought can be powerful, and then we feed the thought, and then we become the thought. So if you're feeding that thought of being depressed, you are going to stay depressed. You know, and then one day you might make that, you know, that thought of, well, you might create a thought of, I want to change. You know, the thing with changes is even if we do want to change, it's trying to look at the benefits of the change, you know, and for me, there's always a place where as you're changing, you're going through that vulnerability, it's scary and you don't really know where you're going to go. You don't know who you're going to become. You know, like with my journey to Peru, I knew I was going to change and I was ready for a change, but I didn't really know what that was going to consist of, you know, and it's only coming to light now. I can feel the change and other people can feel the change, and it's I feel great, you know, it's great to have had that change. And there are similarities to what I was like 10 years ago. You know, I understood that there's no growth in comfort, and you know, but it was all a very physical kind of mental place I was at. I was living in my head. You know, the reason I extreme trained is because I couldn't feel my body otherwise. I couldn't feel my adrenaline. I couldn't feel anxiety. I couldn't feel my heart warming or my heart being cold. I was disconnected from my body, and my recent journeys have helped me connect to a spiritual part that, again, I knew about a little bit and I talked about it a bit, but I never felt it, whereas now I'm feeling it, you know, and that's why I do my self-care practices and my routines, because sometimes I feel the energy in my body. It's taken a lot of practice, but sometimes when I'm meditating now or when I'm doing my breathing exercises, I get chills and shivers through my body, and I can feel my heart and I can feel my stomach, and I realise I did have anxiety for a long time, but my anxiety came out in controlling ways, and I used to say, well, I don't get fear, I don't get anxious, you know, because I was a warrior. And I realised that, you know, although I didn't admit to feeling anxiety, everyone else around me felt my anxiety because the mood swings would happen, you know, and it's only been recently that I've been aware of that. So I did have fear and I did have anxiety, and now I can feel it a little bit more. When the anxiety comes, I can feel it in my stomach. So what I've done is I've actually sat with that feeling, and I've realised it's such a part of our natural human experience, and I'm not trying to run away from that feeling. You know, it's part of who I am. So by sitting with it and recognising it, I deal with it myself, or I take responsibility for it myself, so no one else around me gets affected by that. Whereas 10 years ago, I'd get anxious, I'd get fear, and I'd put up a front, and it wouldn't affect me directly, but it would affect other people around me. So I made it more of an external thing instead of being an internal thing. You know, we want to sometimes get rid of the pain, get rid of the suffering, and that's fine, and that's good, but sometimes we need to sit with that, to connect to it, to understand it. You know, and that's what I feel we're not really doing. You know,
what was the turning point for you then? Like what made you book those plane tickets and head over and try your first ayahuasca experience?
I think my bike accident, when I've come off my bike, you know, it was like the universe was telling me to slow down, and I didn't listen.
Because this was it broken leg?
Well, I shattered my fibula and my tibia.
Yeah.
I broke my left ankle. My big toe come out of its socket. I broke my left wrist as well. So I was in a wheelchair for 3 months.
So was this a lucky to be alive kind of accident?
I think we're all lucky to be alive, aren't we?
You could have died, right?
But, well, if I'd have landed on my head, I was
Yeah.
luckily enough, I landed on my legs.
Yeah.
You know, so if my head would have took the brunt of it. I think because I was about to hit the back of the car and I pulled out to the side. So I kind of hit the side of the car and went down the side of the car, hit the wing mirror. And as I come off my bike, I went onto my side and I rolled. I like to think I did a judo roll, and I carried on rolling, and then I stood up, which is a stupid thing to do, but I did actually stand up.
I can believe it.
And took my helmet off, and then just kind of went, and cursed myself a bit, and then I lay back down. But luckily enough, it hit my legs. It didn't hit my head. If I'd have hit the back of the car, I'd have probably gone over the car and been run over by the car as well at the same time. So
this was a physical guy who, you know, you trained for a living, you taught people how to fight. All of a sudden, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Your physical body's been pretty much destroyed, right? Taken away from you.
Taken away from me, yeah.
And then you were left with what we call mind or spirit, or
I was kind of like, okay, you can feel your leg now, you can feel your body now, but it was like, right, sit there and feel that for a bit.
I still find that such a hard question to answer when someone says, Alex, how do you really feel?
Yeah.
Because we attach words and we'll just come out with things like, you know, I'm alright, I'm happy, I'm sad, but we don't ever really know what the hell that means, right?
Where is it? Where are you feeling that happiness? Yeah. Where are you feeling the love? Yeah. You know, where are you feeling the sadness? You know, because our brains and our guts, you know, the brain and our gut is so connected, but we've kind of seemed to disconnect it. You know, so for me, I had my bike accident. I was in the wheelchair. I could read, thankfully. And I could research things that I was kind of interested in, which again was plant medicine. I've kind of been interested in it for a bit. And this is where the warrior inside me helped me out. This is where the physical body did help me out, and the mentality did help me out, because I wanted to get better again. I wanted to get back to training again. So my discipline, my consistency, which is for me is king. You know, like, I don't ever think I've been great at anything. I just think I've been good at being consistent. So I'll just do the same things again and again, and you can't help but get good at it. So I was determined to get back to the gym, really. So it gave me that. I had that drive, and I went on the road to recovery, and somewhere along that line, my spirit was coming out, and it gave me the spirit to carry on. I had the spirit in me, and all of a sudden I started to like the way that spirit was. You know, people say he's got spirit, you know, and we've all got spirit, you know, and it can be a fantastic tool. And I started connecting to my spirit. That's how it feels.
What intentions did you go in with to the ceremony then?
I think I knew I had some healing to do, some more healing to do. Like all of us, we've had traumatic experiences. You know, I've had a traumatic experience. You know, when I lost my brother, it was a big thing for me. It left a lot of pain and suffering. And although I thought I'd looked at that, and I had looked at it, and I'd worked on it. You know, I'd cried, I'd had a breakdown, I'd done everything. All the emotions had come out. But what I ended up being was disconnected to my body. You know, so I put on the front. I wanted to, are you okay? Yeah, I'm all right. You training? Yeah, I'm training. You still, you know, well, you're saying all the right things. But there was, you know, and I had done a lot of healing. I'd sat with it, you know, because you have kind of had to. There was no getting away from it. You know, your brother's taken his own life. You found him. You know, that's part of it. Becomes part of your identification. But I got stuck in that identification. It became my narrative. You know, whenever I met people, if I started being vulnerable around them, I'd be happy to share that. And people benefited from that. So, you know, people did get their benefits from that. You know, I'm still kind of talking about it now. And it is part of my story. But I was stuck in that story for a long time. It was a good excuse for me to not get on with my life. You know, but... And I'd buried a lot of that trauma down. And by going and doing plant medicine, I sat with it, you know, and I felt, you know, ayahuasca it means the indigenous tribes call it the vine of the dead. So a lot of the time they look at their ancestral traumas when they're using ayahuasca. And I think that's what happened with me, is I got that chance to look at my brother, to talk with my brother. It was like I was in communication with my brother again. So then I started going, okay, right. I started asking him things that I didn't ask him, you know, when he was here, and all the whys. You know, when someone takes their own life, there's a lot of whys, and there's a lot of guilt and a lot of emotions that you really have got no control over. And the one thing ayahuasca shows you is that we've got no control over anything, you know. But we're all trying to get control. We're all searching for this control. So I got to I got to sit with my demons, and I got to sit with my trauma. You know, it was there. My brother was there, you know, and with the shaman there and with the healers, Marseille especially, I helped work through that trauma. You know, and it really helped me out.
What messages did you get back? Like, what did you find out from your brother?
It was a bit of a difficult one, because it was like, again, when you're thinking of afterlife and when you're thinking of our journeys and if there is something after this and if your spirit goes on, you know, when you're in such a bad place in this material world that you want to end your life, if you're your own judge or you're your own God, then you're going to take that with you to wherever you go, if you go anywhere. Like some people say, you don't go anywhere, you know, but if your conscious is there when you leave this material body, you're going to be dealing with some of that stuff. And having that kind of conversation with my brother, like he was still dealing with that, was quite a sad. No, it's not a very nice place, you know. It's like, well, he's had to deal with it on this planet. He thinks he's escaping this planet, but then he might be dealing with it somewhere else. You know, it's quite a hard pill to swallow. But that's my belief, and that's kind of what my belief was and is. So yeah, having them conversations were quite difficult. I cried a lot. You know, but I also laughed a lot because I started thinking about the good times I had with my brother. You know, and I remember a few days before my brother left, we had a grappling match. And I remember sitting to him only last year. I'd literally been on to an ayahuasca ceremony. I'd come back and I was still deep in the medicine. but I'd done my role and I wanted to get back, and I'd kind of pulled a chair out and I tried to connect to my brother's spirit, and I started talking about this last grapple that we had, which was at Neil Adams's place. It was a long time ago, and I was training so hard at the time. I was really training hard, and my brother wasn't very well, physically, mentally, but he was such a good wrestler that we went at it for a bit, and I was trying my best to get him. And I kind of look back at that now and I laugh, because I got there in the end with him, but it was like I was on it. I was at my peak, and he hadn't even really been training, and he was still just so amazing, and it was like, and so it was quite a beautiful moment, so with the tears comes, the joys as well, and I've started to look at the good things that I had, and I'm concentrating on that, and it was the same. A friend who passed away only a couple of months ago, Lord Barrington, and I went to his funeral, and on the way there I was thinking of the good times I had with him. I worked his corner quite a lot, and when he first came round and asked me, to teach him grappling, and it's this big monster of a man who was like, came to pick me up from my mum's, and he was giving me an initiation test. We went and had a grapple, basically, and it was like, even now, just smiling about it, it was the good times. So again, the good times are important, because they're the memories I want to keep hold of. I want to keep them good memories of my brother. I want to keep them good memories of my friends, because it's all part of the human experience. I'm also going to keep the bad memories, but I'm going to sit with them. I'm not going to try and hide them or ignore them. I want to sit with them. So that was part of my healing. I wrote a lot of letters last year and did some fire ceremonies. Journaling's a great way to get it out. We've spoke about this before, Alex. With one of my mentors, Jeff Thompson, who has wrote a lot of his traumas in books. He's prolific at it. He got it out there. It's a great thing to do. Write down what you're thinking, and if you don't want to show anyone, light a fire and put it in the fire. Give it back to the universe. So I did a lot of that kind of that shadow work with my brother, and I'm okay with it. And my dreams have changed and everything. Especially lately, I used to have some really bad night terrors. I used a lot of cannabis to stop that. I thought it helped. It stopped me getting the night terrors, and I thought it helped me sleep, which I realised it didn't. It was a myth, because since I don't use it, I sleep a lot better now.
With the terrors, brother based?
Night terrors were a lot about my brother. I would always be fighting in the dreams and stuff, and then recently my dreams of my brother have changed. So it's kind of, again, whether it's my conscious, whether it's the ayahuasca, the vine of the dead, whether it's sitting there with that trauma and talking to the trauma and finding out where it is, finding out, being okay with it, sitting with it. So by doing that, I feel I've got to a good place, and my dreams about my brother now, I've had some really good dreams about him lately, some more casual dreams.
So you think you should pay attention to your dreams?
A little. I feel myself, I've definitely had some messages lately in my dreams. I've a dream about, so I dreamt about my cousin the other day. I haven't spoke to for a long time, and I woke up and I got in touch with my cousin, which made me go and see my auntie, which created some good energy, and it was needed as well. Sometimes your dreams are kind of nonsense, but sometimes there are messages in there. Depends how in tuned you are with yourself.
I'm having some therapy on these, because I've had I think you call it night terrors, nightmares for 12 years now. Yeah. But they've started to become like archetypal figures showing up, and it's like, this is just crazy. Yeah. And it's just fascinating. I'm more fascinated, intrigued. Yeah, it's interesting. Again, there's a lot of Carl Jung talk a lot about the dreams, and but again, it's something that are we attaching to as well a little bit, But on the last retreat we had,
at La Medicina, I'd been working with Heroic Hearts Project, and most of the guys from Heroic Hearts Projects was USA based, but we had the first English retreat, so it was English vets only from Heroic Hearts Project UK, and one of the guys there who's a friend, and I hope he doesn't mind me saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. So he'd suffered from night terrors for 10 years, so he had post-traumatic stress from some situations in his life. He'd been in Iraq and been in a car crash as well, and he'd attached to his PTS for a long time, and when he came to the retreat and had ayahuasca, his dreams changed, his night terrors had changed. I spoke to him again the other day because I'm holding integration circles, and his dreams have gone. His dreams have changed, so he's like a different person now. He was very good with his self-care practices. I've learned a lot from him myself. He likes his breathing exercises. He's a vegan, so he's very careful of what he eats, and he likes to look after his body, look after his mind, but this was the missing element. He couldn't get to the source, and we spoke a bit about him changing his narrative, changing his story, and that's how I can relate to him doing that, because I felt I've had to change my story. I was stuck in my story for a bit, and this is where the attachment comes. You get attached to the suffering.
Do you create a new one then, or do you just try and have no identity?
I think you start creating new ones, you become another person.
That serve you better?
That serves your where you're at better.
Okay.
So it's interesting concept, isn't it, really?
But you haven't thought about that? You haven't sat there and thought, this is the identity I'm going to create? You've just followed a path?
I think if you're trying to create a specific identity, then it becomes quite ego-based. It's your ego's trying to get involved there, and that's, again, your ego can be your drive, and it can help you with your passion, or it can help you create some amazing things. So it's not, I'm not talking about it in a negative way, because it can be very positive, but it's also an attachment as well that we can get stuck in. So for me at the moment, I'm just concentrating on I'll concentrate on changing my story, changing my identification, and what I'm concentrating on now is my internal self-care practices. And in a weird kind of way, the universe has started to provide things for me, which is, again, is another concept, but I believe in a bit of a universal law. But to be in touch with that universal law, I need to be quite clean and cleansed. I've got no addictions at all at the moment, no soft addictions, no hard addictions, and things keep happening or presenting themselves to me, so I might be creating a new story or another chapter, but I haven't specifically got a goal of what I want to do. It's all just about taking care of myself.
So that's your North Star right now?
That's kind of my purpose, and then with that purpose creates other purposes.
Yeah, I spoke about this yesterday with a friend where he asked me right out, we were talking about purpose and lack of, and he spun the question around and said, do you feel like you're worth the purpose? Like if I said to you, your only mission now in life is to work on yourself, would you feel like that's a worthwhile mission? I was like, fucking hell, that's a big question, man. Probably not. And I think that's one of the first stages. It's like, am I worth the time and the effort?
I think I'm worth it.
Yeah, really?
Sorry, yeah. I think because,
surely it hasn't always been that straight, right? It's not always been like, yeah, I'm worth everything, I deserve this. Surely you've had times where you're fighting with yourself saying...
100%, there's been times where I've been very close to taking my own life, Alex.
Yeah. So you've been fighting,
Yeah, you've got to be, it's part of the human experience. Anyone who's kind of done something and got over it, whether that be an addiction, You know, you talk to someone who's an alcoholic and they're deep in their alcoholism when they're starting to lose everything around them. They're not the kind of person who are going to see the growth in that situation. Whereas you talk to someone who's maybe a recovering alcoholic and they're looking back on it, they're probably grateful for that experience because it's got them to another place.
So when you talk about like thinking about taking your own life, like what's the driving force behind that? Like if you can look back on it now, like what drives you to that point? Is there anything specific that you say, yeah, it was this, it was the trauma, it was me not being able to process and deal? Do you know what it was, or was it all just
I think
like
a lot of it comes down to self-worth. A lot of people who are in that situation feel that this world is a better place without them in it. So a lot of it becomes, in my opinion, it becomes about self-worth and self-love and purpose. This is where purpose fits in. You know, if you can't love yourself, it's hard to give that love out to others. You know, and then there's that fine line where you love yourself so much that you're not aware of others. You know, so it's again, it comes back to balance. You know, but lots of things can happen. One day you can be feeling really low, and the next day you might be feeling all right. You know, hang on in there is my view on it. You know, because like nature, life's changing, or forever changing, and some days it's winter, and some days it's spring, and some days it's summer. You know, sometimes we're shedding our skin and it's autumn. So you can learn a lot from that. You know, it's a lot of us are living in the past. With, you know, it's like, oh, this is what happened to me, and this, and we're stuck in the past.
Yeah.
You know, we need to try and get a reality check and be in the present.
I agree with that.
Which is again something that you have to practice. You have to practice being a human being instead of a human doing. You know, where you're always doing something and always distracted instead of just being and just kind of feeling what's going on in the moment.
Yeah, it's tough to do because I know as humans we like to get better at things. Like you've used the word, you know, improving your own self-game. Like still, there's an element of you working on something. You're not just sitting around doing nothing. You're working. Like do you know what I mean? So I think as long as every guy has that they might be okay. But I was thinking about this whole depression thing, and I feel like I can talk about this because I've been there, and a lot of mine was also down to courage as well. The courage not to pursue what I really wanted to do. That can create a depressed life. Yeah. You know, when you're doing things that just don't serve you, or doing things because of a certain way you've been brought up, or do things because it's easier. I found that often that is because they're both hard routes. Like if you chase what you really want in life, it's hard. Yeah, isn't it? It is. But so is also staying in a life that just is not fulfilling. Yeah, they're both difficult. Again, but a lot of it's for me. But the stage I'm at now, a lot of it's attachment. You know, it's like you're wanting to do something to be successful in your eyes. You know, and sometimes you can. The next thing you know, you've become successful in that area, but you've become unsuccessful in other areas. Sure, and that's so it's hard to get that. It is hard. It's hard to find what's important to you. It's definitely hard, Matt. Lockdown was a little bit of a blessing for me because it forced me to stop, slow down, give up the gym, and then I come across that minimalist thing which grabbed my attention. I was like, I'm going to start getting rid of stuff off the phone, get rid of stuff, and that was a great draw. And like you say, if you're aware and you sit in it, you can see like, oh, I'm attached to this item of clothing. It's insane. Yeah. Like, do you know what I mean? It's crazy. It is crazy. You're sat there debating for 20 minutes whether keeping this jacket's going to make you happy or not. Yeah. But it's the programming's deep though, isn't it? It's very deep. You know, so I've got compassion for that as well. You know, because the programming is we've been raised on it. Yeah. So, you know, people are attached to material objects, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's part of their journey. You know, if someone wants to go out and get that nice car because they feel they feel successful by doing that, then that's fine. That's their journey. You know, good luck to them. You know, and that's okay. I'm okay with that, and they should be okay with that. Well, do you not think it depends? If they're sat there and go, I love my life, it's great. Yeah. Cool. But do you not think if they're saying, there's got to be more to life than this. I'm working my arse off.
Well, that's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is people won't be fulfilled with that. Usually, if we're relying on a material object to measure our success, you're going to get that material object, and then you're going to go, well, actually, this wasn't what I was looking for.
No, but we know this, don't we?
But knowing it and feeling it are totally different things.
Yeah, because we will repeat the same mistakes until we've learnt them, right?
Yeah.
So it's like the guy who gets a car.
Well, we might never learn them.
Nice. No, we might not.
But it's where does it stop? That's the thing. It's like you can get the nicest car in the world, but then the next nice car comes out. And it's an external. In my view on it, it's an external thing. You're relying on something out there to make you happy, whereas that's not going to happen. You need to rely on in here. It's going to make you happy. People keep asking me, when you're going away again, and it's like, I'm here, I'm inside here. I don't need to. If I go away, I'll go away. But internally, I've found happiness. But I'm also going to have moments where I'm not happy.
I was going to say, it's a fleeting state, right?
Yeah, it's happiness. We're all kind of looking for it, and that's all we want. We just want happiness, and I'm afraid to say, but that's not life. That's not the human experience. No. It doesn't allow for that.
No, I think the worrying thing is that the happiness comes with a higher high. So that everything's bigger, faster. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So the highs are higher, but the lows are lower. And I think we chase those constant highs, wanting this state of permanent happiness. Yeah. Just that acceptance, like what you've just said, is great. If someone's listening to this and all they take is that it's normal. Yeah. And just accepting it. The guy who I had last week, Paul Foster, he's the chef at Salt in Stratford. Great guy. And he said as soon as he accepted that, he said, my life was so much better. Yeah. He was like, I stopped thinking I should be happy all the time. Yeah. He was like, I just turn my phone off for the day, watch TV, play with my kids.
That's what it's all about,
so fucking happy.
That's it. It's non-attachment. It's making your life simple. But it's hard. We've been programmed to buy, programmed to eat, programmed to do a lot of things that that are not really necessary, but undoing that programming is hard work. It takes years.
How has it been for people around you, like loved ones, friends? Have you lost friends? Because if you're a different person and you've had this rebirth, then surely your friends and family are going to be like, well, this is a different person, which it is.
Yeah.
How's that gone down? Because change is hard for the individual, it's hard for the people around us as well, right?
Yeah, well, what's been beautiful with like my Sarah, let's say, is that, been together a long time, love each other's company, quite very physical. Having two teenage boys doesn't help with that aspect of things. And when you go on these retreats, there's a lot of restrictions, so no certain foods, like no dairy, no alcohol, no drugs, no sex.
How long's the time period?
Well, last year it was like nearly 5 months. so yeah, it's a long time when you.
Are these guidelines, Matt, or are these like, look, if you come to this retreat, this is what you do?
They're kind of guidelines. If you're going to commit yourself to something like that, you want to do it. In my opinion, you want to do it properly. And anything I've ever done, I do properly. You've got to do it properly. So if you're going to benefit by having these restrictions, there's places that you go to in Peru that they don't even mention the restrictions. I've heard people go, oh, what are the restrictions? And they're going on higher journeys.
Sorry to interrupt, because this is important. I think what you've just said is so fucking key, that whole, like, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do I'm going to do my best. I think that alone is good for mental health. Yeah. That's proper respect there.
Yeah, respect yourself.
Yeah, because you're doing your best.
Respect the energy that you're getting.
Whatever comes of it, outcome, irrelevant, right? You've just said, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it well. Yeah. And again, that just commands self-respect, doesn't it? Yeah. That's who you are.
That's what. Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. That's a great thing to aim for and aspire for.
Yeah.
Isn't it? No matter what you're doing.
Yeah. Be the best of it. Yeah. Be the best you can.
Just privately is enough.
Yeah.
Not publicly. I love that.
It's all about privately, and it's baby steps. Take your time with it. Don't think you're going to be, if you're going to start training or, I don't know, BJJ, boxing, whatever training, don't think you're going to be like Royce Gracie or Floyd Mayweather. You
No,
know,
it's that
just
attitude
them
you
little
just mentioned.
little baby steps.
Yeah,
You know,
I've just started BJJ, and my attitude hopefully is a little bit like that. I'm just
Yeah.
proud that I'm showing up and learning.
that's it. Yeah,
That's good enough for me.
so it's
That's
enough.
it.
Yeah,
I love anything that you can get better at.
yeah.
Anything that you can dedicate time and effort to, like a craft, a
Well,
skill.
Mine's life now.
Yeah,
I can get better at living. You know, and that means all the emotions.
yeah,
So that means when I lose someone who I love, I'm gonna deal with it better.
yeah,
Yeah, I'm gonna think about the good times I've had with them. Think about the good things, and so I'm gonna cope with it a bit better. It's not gonna. I'm still gonna be upset. I'm still gonna be sad, but I'm aware that it's gonna happen. I'm not being an ostrich and putting my head in the sand and making out that unless I'm happy, that's the only thing that's gonna work, because it's not. You know, and going back to my relationship with Sarah, you know, like we've kind of had a bit more of a spiritual kind of connection since I come back last year. We've been more in tune spiritually. You know, we like on Sunday, the weather weren't that great, so my Sarah loves the sun. She had a couple of days off. There was these Jubilee celebrations and stuff, but the weather weren't that great. But we went out anyway, and we'd come back, and we did a sound bath together, and I got to do a little bit of a meditation with us, and you know, she does her breathing exercises, she's doing a yoga, so her self-care practices have gone through the roof. But instead of me telling her and saying you should do this, you should do that, I've just led by example, and now we're doing the things together, and it's added another avenue of our relationship, which is great. You know, so what you were saying, have people around me benefited from it? I'd like to say, yeah, really, you'd have to ask them. You know, I'm still Matty. You know, I'm still a work in progress, but I feel my energy's changed, my body language has changed a little bit, and I feel I've got more compassion for people. You know, I'm not judging people. You know, and because I feel healed, I'm hoping I might be able to touch other people and, you know, open their spirit up and get them sort of finding a purpose of just looking after themselves, you know, letting them have some self-love and some self-worth.
yeah. Because that's,
You know.
that seems like the next logical step to help other people with their suffering, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think, you know, once you've healed yourself, and I think it's important. It's not, you know, you can still help people, you know, but when you're in a good place and you can lead by example, you're more authentic, you know, and if we are passing energy on with people, if you've got I refer to it as dark energy, you know, if you've got some dark energy going on and you're trying to help people, you might be putting that dark energy on them as well. So it's a funny area, but I feel if I'm healed, which doesn't mean that I'm not going to have moments again where I'm going to have to work on myself. I work on myself every day. So, but yeah, if I feel healed, then I feel I can be of service. So I've been of service to myself, and now I'm hoping to be of service to others. And that's why I'm working with Heroic Hearts Project UK. They've made me their integration coach. I'm doing a transformational recovery and integrational recovery coaching course with Being True to You, which again has made me look at myself and realise how internal everything is. So I'm hoping to pass that on and to help people when they're going through a hard time, you know, to coach them through it a little bit. You know, we've got to do it ourselves, you know, but it's nice to have someone there who can inspire you, who can coach you through it, who's been in them dark places as well. You know, that does help, instead of maybe someone who's a professional who's diagnosing you. I'm not trying to do that, who thinks that you might be broken. I don't think anyone's broken. We're just where we're at that moment. So that's kind of for me, quite a natural progression from being someone who's helping someone get physically fit and healthy. Now I'm trying to get someone mentally fit, physically fit, and spiritually fit.
Yeah.
So it's just added another concept to it.
So if you're into like your Carl Jung theories and a bit of Jordan Peterson as well, they would say that these energies don't necessarily go anywhere too much. We just can look at them and view them and decide which ones to channel into. And having that dark energy accessible if we need it is quite useful, according to Jordan Peterson. He'd be like, it's good to be dangerous, but you've got to know how to control it. Do you still believe with that theory, or do you feel like it should be about squashing as much of that dark energy as you can, getting it out of your body and purely living off good energy, or do you think it's useful to have a balance?
I think it's just a case of it's energy. Energy's energy. It's us who label the energy. So something that I might think is dark energy, someone else might not think that. So a lot of it's about perception, in my view on it. So energy's there. We're surrounded by energy. We've got energy inside us. We're kind of passing energy at the moment, and anyone who's listening to this is getting an idea of that energy as well. Whether we attach to it and say this is dark energy, this is light energy, this is positive, this is negative, we're putting labels on that. Energy is just energy. We can manifest or create that energy. So I can do something that can create energy that you perceive as being dark, but in my opinion it might not be dark, or my journey might not be accepting that that's dark energy, and that's why someone will do something bad to someone, because in their eyes they might not be perceiving it as being bad. They might be perceiving it as being, well, it's me or them, and they might see it as in it's survival of the fittest.
Well, that was a classic Hitler issue. He believed truly he was doing a good thing.
Yeah.
You believe that?
Yeah.
He truly believed he was doing.
But we're all capable. We're all capable of being that horrible person.
Sure.
So we're all capable of destruction.
Yeah.
But we're also all capable of love and creation. And sometimes in our life, especially my own life, I've been destructive. Definitely, not just to myself, but to everyone around me. And now I'm manifesting the energy that's coming from with me and is all around me. Now I'm trying to manifest that energy into more of a love kind of energy, or a good feeling. People don't like to say love, or especially when you're talking men's mental health or women's mental health. It's like, love, crying. People don't want to hear that. But ultimately that's where it is. It's either destructive or it's creative, and we're all capable of doing that. So that's again for me where I'm connected to God, or I can be God, because I can create or I can destruct. It's not right or wrong, it's just energy.
I've never thought about it like that until you mentioned it. And I've read a lot of stuff on this, but you're right. If I go out this door now, my next action could determine whether that energy is transformed into what we would call positive or negative. Simple. Yeah. So I've never really thought about it like that. It's just energy.
It's just energy.
Because in your head you have it of these these compartments.
Yeah.
This side of you is good. Do you know what I mean? That's in your head how it is. Which one am I going to tap into?
That's it. But that's why we're looking at trying to be happy.
Yeah.
We're trying to have that. Oh, right, I want to be happy. I want love. I want this. I want that. And it's like, okay, but that's not how energy works. Whereas when you look at it more as energy, you start saying, okay, what am I manifesting? Am I manifesting creation, or am I manifesting destruction? And for me, creation's love. It's exciting. It's change. And you might get anxious because of it, but I perceive it as a good thing. And destruction, maybe I perceive that as possibly a bad thing. But then there's also sometimes things need to be destroyed to come back again. So again, it's symbiosis. We're living in it together. It's all is one. And again, people might be thinking I've had too much ayahuasca, but you get shown a lot of that kind of thing on your journey.
Do you give a shit now, like, that people might listen to this and go, have you heard what Matty's saying? He's off his rocker. Are you worried about any of that?
Nah, no. I'm not worried about that.
No.
Nah. Fair play to them. If they know me well, they know I've always been a little bit off my rocker. So, yeah. I think out of the box. I'm out of the box, and I've always, some of the discussions going back to Sarah and if I've changed were, like, come on, Sayers, I've always been a little bit looking that way when everyone else is looking that way. You know, I want to be a shepherd, you know, and being a shepherd can be lonely sometimes, but the views are beautiful.
Absolutely. It's so easy to fit in. It's so easy to fit in.
You know, but I do love the idea of energy. You know, I've seen the energy. I've seen that energy transfer to, you know, from being, you're in a good place, something happens with a family member, all of a sudden it's like you're spitting feathers. You know, the energy's transferred. The energy, you could get a phone call now and your energy could totally change. You know, so energy is around us, like it or not. You know, look, it's a beautiful day today, the sun's out, it's giving us energy. You get up in the morning and go for a walk, especially when the weather's like this, and you'll be working. You know, some people can't get out of bed and go for a walk, you know, but the thought of it, think about it, visualise it, you know, it's all that working with energy. And my language has changed as well, Alex. You know, I learned that as well for some of my self-work and sitting in a tambo in the jungle. My language started changing, you know, and I'm very careful of what I say to myself, you know, because if I tell myself something too much, sometimes I can become that thing, you know, whatever you're telling yourself, you know. So I try and be very careful about labelling things, and you know, and what I say. And language is man-made, you know, so we can say what we want, you know, but if you're not doing it and people can't feel that authenticity from you, then language doesn't mean anything.
No, and we spoke about levels. I think how you speak to other people is, you know, something you can be really aware of, but how you speak to yourself, that's again, correcting and being aware of that is another level. I've seen
with a lot of veterans how they've very beautiful to other people, but they've got no self-love. They're not beautiful to themselves. They're constantly like having a go at themselves. They're never good enough. It's that constant, you know, and a lot of people are like that.
I get that, mate. I get that. It's hard. It's a hard thing.
Sorry, mate.
No, mate. I'm
very,
totally transparent.
Very, very beautiful, you know, to other people and trying to help other people, but sometimes not kind of going,
yeah,
actually, I'm doing all right here. I'm working with the tools I've got, and I'm trying to be of service, you know, and I'm okay, you know.
It's the hardest fucking thing to just look at yourself and go, oh, I'm all right.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah, but it's not. It's practice.
Yeah.
It takes practice, you know. And while you're attached, it can be difficult.
Yeah. I see it as a process. You know, there's always cleaning and cleansing to do. As long as you're doing that, like, because you don't put dates to these things. You don't say by the end of the year I'm going to love myself, do you? You just have to consistently show up, like you said, and
be in
try
the present.
To do the right thing as well.
Be in the present.
Yeah, I think that doing the right thing is the main thing.
Yeah, doing, you know, again, I know I refer back to it, but what are you doing?
Yeah.
How are you, you know, when was the last time you took a self-care day or self-care night where you actually did things that were good for you physically, mentally and spiritually, mind, body, spirit? You know, how many people are doing that? And that doesn't mean going out, having a day off work, you know, and putting, you know, toxins in your body or poison in your body. You know, I'm talking about things that are going to be healthy for you. You know, how many of us do that? Even if it is going and sitting in your garden and just being, you know, looking at the flowers, looking at the bees, looking at whatever. You know, how many of us are doing them practices? You know, if life's not going well, you know, which for some people it's not, you know, then step back and what are you doing about that? What are you inputting into your body? You know, because if we're honest and we start to look at ourselves and we reflect on what's been going on, you'll find the source of that and you'll look at who's responsible for that. You know, and every time I look at who's responsible for where I am now, it comes back to me every single time, and I can avoid it and I can blame and I can point the finger at other people, but I know that it's my responsibility. You know, when I had my bike accident and I couldn't move, and I didn't want to even think that was actually my fault. That was my fault that happened. That was my responsibility, and I wrote it down in a journal. I don't even think I've looked at it again, but I wrote it down, and while I was writing it down, I accepted it. And then it was easy to turn around and say, yeah, well, actually, I was a self-defense instructor, and I'm riding around on a motorbike, and I took my eye off the ball for a split second, and then I crashed my bike, and ended up in a wheelchair. Whose fault's that? It's my fault, But it was difficult. I didn't even want to look at that responsibility for 6 months. There was no look. It was like, right, I've got to get fit, I've got to get healthy, I've got to get back in the gym. I was properly here. And then when I started sort of going, okay, because people go, what happened? Whose fault? And it was like, yeah, actually, it was my fault. Oh, okay. It's my actions, my fault, my responsibility, So everything that happened from that was my responsibility. Even when I had my surgery and they missed my toe, even though it was pointing up to the ceiling, and it was properly dislocated. And by the time I had to have another operation, and they got to put my toe back, which would have been quite a simple, would have been quite an easy procedure compared to everything else that had gone on. They've had to screw my toe in. My big toe doesn't move now. So, but it's like, oh, that was their fault, they missed it. No, because when you go further back to the source, it was my fault. So, and when you acceptance is a beautiful thing, because then all of a sudden you don't feel embarrassed, you don't feel like angry with all these emotions. You start to go, okay, my fault, right, okay, so what am I going to do about it?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that's it. I took responsibility for it, and it was difficult.
It is. It's not nice. I look at all my failed relationships, and I was always like, why do I keep ending up with the wrong women? And then you just, like you say, you wake up and you're like, well, you picked every single person that you've been with, and you've behaved in the same manner. There's a reason why every relationship ends the same way. A common denominator.
There's always a common denominator. I've had
every excuse.
Everything. Yeah, and again, it takes practice to be responsible for yourself.
Of course.
It really does.
It's powerful though.
It's very powerful. And it's very beautiful as well.
It's freeing. You haven't got to worry about how everyone else is behaving.
It's again, I know I refer to taking my armour off, but you take that skeleton.
It's weird how you can see it in someone, isn't it? Someone and I'm not talking physically lighter. I just mean they seem lighter.
Yes. Yeah.
It's so bizarre. Yeah. It's that word you said, energy.
Yeah, it's
energy. Jeff used to talk about radiating energy, and I used to think, wow, bullshit. But when you're around it, you're like, you feel it.
Yes, and everyone can feel an example of that.
Yeah.
It's the ayahuasca ceremonies are really strange, because you'll be in a ceremony, and there's different types of ayahuasca. So there was an ayahuasca called a lot of it's yellow ayahuasca, which means yellow ayahuasca, and then there's another ayahuasca that the shaman used to use especially when you're working with Marines, and these hardcore soldiers who've got these. They're warriors, man. Yeah. They're very beautiful people, and if they've got you back, you feel very safe. But to break that down, to break into them was hard. And there was another ayahuasca called Cascabel, and it was like, bring out the Cascabel kind of moment. And occasionally, it'd be like, well, I'll be talking to Chris, and he'd be saying, right, I think we're going to need to use Cascabel on this guy. And straight away, my energy would be like, oh no. And I'd be scared, because in a room of 10 people, if one person is having Cascabel, not always everyone, but guaranteed the person next to him, or anyone who's in tune with the energy in that ceremony, i.e. the shaman or me. And the first time that happened, where they gave Cascabel to someone, I'd had Cascabel on one of my own journeys, so it means rattle. So they refer to snakes as Cascabel, rattlesnakes, and you get visuals, and your visuals will rattle, so they'll be shaking. So they're very different to the other ayahuasca. There's similarities, but it's very different. And the first time someone had cascabel on a ceremony, I said to the shaman the next day, "Did you give me cascabel by mistake last night?" And he was like, he laughed, and he's like, "No," he says, "but you're getting so in tune with the energy that you're getting the visions, because there's like they call it a psychic spillage. So one person can be having cascabel, and the person next to him will feel that, and he'll be sort of have a different journey and a different vision, and that's energy." And again, talking about it, people are probably thinking, what? I know a few guys who experienced that as well, and I was telling them about this is what's going to happen, and they're kind of like, wow. But when it happened, all of a sudden, these guys are starting to go, I believe in energy. I know energy, you know, and again, we can all feel it. We can all think of something like we're sitting in this beautiful place now. If a car suddenly come through that window, you know, the energy in this place would change. Yeah, we'd all be starting to think, well, how can I feel safe? Whereas at the moment, I feel safe, you know. So we understand energy to a certain degree, but we don't realise that when you're talking to someone, there's a transferal of energy. So we're sitting here now and there's a transferal of energy. And when you start thinking of it like that, you start going, okay, so what energy am I giving out? What energy am I taking in? You know, and by watching certain things on TV or social media, you're taking in people's energy. You know, I think there's studies going on at the moment with certain TV programs you're watching, if it's getting your heart racing,
sure,
you know, and if it's stressful or dramatic, them things are actually happening to your body. And if you start thinking about how big a killer stress is, you're watching that program that's stressing you out from the safety of your own home. So all of a sudden you're taking that stressful energy on. Yeah, and that's not a great thing, you know. And again, I love technology. There's some beautiful things with it. It's helped me connect to people around the world, you know, and I love that, you know. But I'm also very aware of what I watch, because, you know, if I'm adding stress to my life, then I've got to be careful with that, you know, because stress is a big killer. They say it's probably the biggest killer in the world.
Apparently,
you know,
diet.
So yeah, and that's huge, especially for people like us. It's like, oh,
you think you're covered, don't you? If you get your diet right,
yeah.
And it's like, no, not necessarily.
So again, it's energy, you know, and it's again, I don't know, let's take porn for an idea. You watch too much porn, you become that. You want everyone around you to become that. Your sexual life goes a little bit out the window. It's energy. You're taking that energy on. You start to think it's normal. You know, we become. Environments are very funny things. If you're in a certain environment, you'll act a certain way because you programmed it to act that way in that environment. You know, so most people go into a pub and it's have a pint. You know, whether you're not supposed to drink or not. So the energy's there, and the energy's like in our own living rooms. Everyone's got a TV. You know, literally everyone's got a phone. So there's a lot of. I don't like to use the word control, but you know, when you control when you choose what you watch, you have to be careful as well. You know, because you might be choosing to watch something, and you might think, well, I'm just chilling out. I want to switch off, but you're putting on something that's highly stressful. That's making your heart race.
Well, yeah, and it's their job as well.
Yeah,
it's the rightest job. And they always say you've got to tune into emotions.
Got to get you addicted. You know, and it's like, ugh. And that can be quite controversial. You know, again, referring back to have I changed, and have the people around you noticed it, and you know, Sarah works hard, bless her, you know, like, and she'll come back and she wants to chill out and sometimes watch some TV, and I'm sitting there and I don't want to watch the TV, and it can cause a bit of it caused a few arguments, you know, and it's again, for me, it's energy. You know, it's weird. I'm saying to my boys, like, you know, they like football and they like the UFC, and I've worked corners for mixed martial artists. You know, I've seen the fights. I've been in that violence. I've been that destructive person, and now I'm like, it's too violent. I can't watch it, and they're laughing at me. Going, what do you mean? How can you say that's too violent? And it's like, it's just the energy from watching that. You know, in today's day and age, we're still sitting there cheering when someone gets knocked out.
So have you heard the phrase?
Funny concept.
It takes a lot of violence to be this gentle.
Yeah.
Have you heard that phrase?
Yeah.
And that's how
I get
see
that.
people like yourself and Jeff.
I've seen it. I've seen it firsthand with Jeff.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen Jeff go right through that transition period. You know, so I've seen it. You know, and even people like Tony and Glenn. You know, some beautiful people. You know, and even the things that like someone like Barrington was doing. You know, working with people who were homeless. You know, when he was a football hooligan. You know, we can change, you know, and there's nothing wrong with changing, you know, it's a good thing, you know, but awareness is where it starts, you know, and I'm not saying there aren't some beautiful programs on the TV, you know, because there are, you know. I walked in the other day and my son was watching David Attenborough, you know, and a nature program, and when you're watching that program, it's like you're there, you know, it's good for you. You know, so we do have to be careful. But I'll say this now: everyone's on their own journey, so you can do whatever you want. It's your choice, you know. And please, you know, sit with it, take it in, you know. But just be aware of what you're giving out. Really, take in whatever energy you want to take in. You know, just be careful what energy you're giving out. And that's, if I'm going to give a message, maybe that's my message.
You've blown my mind today on that.